What's going on YouTube? Bacon here bringing you another video. This one going to be my weeks 4 through 6 matches for LD Minors Season 5. Since I kind of already gave a lot of prelude in the first video, I'll just hop right into it here. My week 4 match is against Hunter. I'm coming into this match 1-2, having just picked up my first win in the previous week against Vulcan. Starting out 1-3 is pretty tough to come back from. It is a 10-game season, which kind of helps in that respect, but starting out 1-3 was not something that I was looking to do. But Hunter's obviously a very good player. He started out just recently in draft, I think. I'm pretty sure he came over from Smogon, but has had some pretty good performances in DPL and Clash of Kings. So definitely a pretty difficult matchup for us. And kind of team-wise here, we've got another problem. We've got Mega Scizor plus Slowbro, which is very difficult for Aerodactyl to really do anything this match. So actually, as you can see, ended up not bringing it. And then Zygarde and the Blacephalon, it's very difficult for my team to switch into because a lot of my ground immunities on this team are just Levitate Pokemon, Rotom Heat, Latios, and the like. And obviously Aerodactyl doesn't resist 1,000 arrows either. It'll actually be super effective after it hits me with one. So not great switch-ins on my team for either of those two Pokemon, Zygarde or Blacephalon. You see my Jellicent here obviously doesn't resist ghosts. Actually gets hit super effectively by Ghost. And really the only viable switch in to Blacephalon I thought was like more of a bulky Aerodactyl set, but without Pursuit that just seems like not so great for me. So definitely pretty difficult looking matchup wise. I definitely wasn't coming into this game expecting to have much of a chance, if I'm being honest, because just dealing with Mega Scizor in general is very difficult for me. I did learn a little bit of my lesson from week 1 where I faced Noons who had regular Scizor, that I probably need both Rotom Heat and Jellicent to be able to deal with the Scizor, but otherwise, definitely a tough one for me here on paper. So looking at what he decided to bring here, I have a few options at lead. Like I could just lead Girder and start taking items if I wanted to. I've also got some other options like Mamoswine matches up pretty well against most of his team, bar like a Scizor lead, for example, because I should be able to eat one hit from Blacephalon since I am thick fat on this Mamoswine. But in any case, he decides to lead with the Slowbro here as I just lead with the Girder, because I did, like I said, have a pretty free knockoff if he didn't lead Slowbro, but he's just going to teleport out and immediately get in his Blacephalon, which is very bad for me. I was pretty surprised that he decided not to just throw off a Shadow Ball there in front of the Jellicent, but I guess he was probably scouting for Seed Berry, just because, like I said, I'm so weak to the Blacephalon that it might not be too surprising for me to have that here and be able to try and knock him out with Shadow Ball in return or something like that. But he does make a smart scout and goes out into Umbreon. As I go Sylveon here, Sylveon should take 2 Spec Shadow Balls based on my defensive investment. So I wasn't too worried about going out into that here and just scouting out the damage, but he ended up doubling into Umbreon, again, presumably scouting for the Seed Berry, which is a good scout on his part. But it actually puts me in a pretty advantageous position with my Sylveon here, which is actually kind of a weird set this week. I'm running Body Slam, Mystical Fire with Rest Talk, so that way I can take Toxics all day and just get off some pairs on his team. Gonna pair off on something like Gligar, slows it down for my Girder, which is good because I do have Ice Punch. Sorry, I'm gonna turn the speed down a little bit here. Like I said, going back a couple turns here, getting a pair off on Gligar would be nice for my Girder because I do have Ice Punch, so if I'm able to paralyze the Gligar, I will be faster than it, be able to smack that thing. It's just kind of good in general for my team to spread para throughout his squad, and obviously that means he can't freely switch in Blacephalon on me, especially even if I'm asleep and I'm clicking Sleep Talk. Either hit on Blacephalon is fine. If I get a Body Slam off, I have a chance to para. If I get a Mystical Fire off, I'm dropping its special attack stat, so it can't just start boosting through me and KOing me with Shadow Ball. So I really like the Sylveon set this week for that purpose. But yeah, getting back into it. I don't get the pair the first time on Gligar, that's fine. I'm just go out into Mamoswine. This is a pretty good opportunity for me to get Stealth Rocks up if I want to, but I can also kind of freely throw off a knockoff here, predicting the Slowbro to come in, which it does. So I'm able to get the knockoff on Slowbro, and that does very little damage, so it's looking like he's probably max Phys-Def Slowbro, which is going to be kind of difficult for my Mamoswine to break through, but I'm just going to go right back out into Sylveon here as he decides to throw off another Toxic. So Toxic spam's been pretty prevalent versus my team, I would say. Like if you look at the Vulcan matchup last week, he brought a lot of Toxic as well. Unfortunately, I don't have Heal Bell on Sylveon, so I can't get it off of my Mamoswine, but like I said, I am Rest Talk Sylveon, so I don't really care too much about being Toxic. And I believe I'm actually just going to go for Rest right here, yep. Go for Rest, get my Sylveon back to no toxic status. That was pretty important because this is kind of really my only switch in to Blacephalon on my team, so I needed to make sure I wasn't going to be getting too KO'd upon switch in due to toxic damage. So here I'm just going to go for Sleep Talk, get a little bit more chip off on this Gligar as he decides to U-turn out. And he actually goes hard into Blacephalon here, which, considering I've shown Body Slam, I thought was pretty risky on his end, because if I do get the para off on Blacephalon, I'm going to guaranteed outspeed him with, I think, everything on my team, bar maybe Girder would outspeed after a Body Slam para. So pretty surprised to see him go out to Blacephalon here and risk the Body Slam, but you know, he knocks me off and I get a Sleep Talk rest, unfortunately, so I don't get a chance to try and para him. Here I'm just going to go for another Body Slam. Again, just kind of fishing for a paralysis on that Blacephalon. Should be really good for me. Here, I prepped this Rotom Heat to really break through his team. So this turn I figured he'd probably go for either Roost or for... really just Roost on that turn. I guess Earthquake was a potential play, but I really didn't think he'd go for Toxic in front of a Sylveon that's already shown Rest. So I figured going out into Rotom here was fine, and because I've seen Toxic and U-turn on this Gligar, I know he doesn't have anything to break a substitute, so I'm just going to sub up in front of him. He gets fully parried, but if he was going for Toxic that turn, it doesn't really matter anyway. And I'm just going to Nasty Plot up here as he goes out into his Slowbro. This is sub Nasty Plot, Overheat, Thunderbolt or Discharge, one of the two. So I go for Nasty Plot here. I'm +2 in front of a Slowbro. I really didn't think he was going to just give me Slowbro, considering how much of a threat Mamoswine is to his team if he does. Obviously, he's got the Mega Scizor to help deal with it, but Mamoswine overall would look really good if I got rid of the Slowbro, and something else that would look really good is my Girder if I were able to get rid of this Slowbro. So I'm actually going to Nasty Plot again here, predicting him to go out into his Zygarde. What that would have done is +2 Nasty Plot Overheat did not KO Zygarde from full, but +4 did. So what I was thinking was he would double into Zygarde to catch the electric type move, go for 1,000 arrows to break my sub, and then go down. So I was thinking in this, or not go down, but break my substitute, and then I would be forced to switch out because he would live in Overheat at +2. But I went for the Nasty Plot there again, predicting him to save his Slowbro, but he actually just stays here in here to click Scald. So I was pretty surprised again, like I said, that he would actually go for that play. But I think eventually he's going to figure out that he shouldn't be giving me his Slowbro. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spam Substitute a couple of times, because if he ever switches out, I guarantee that my Rotom gets a KO. And potentially 2, depending on what he switches out into. But he does just finally go into the Zygarde this turn. Again, we're playing that game around, like, eventually he would give me his Slowbro if I clicked a Thunderbolt. So I figured he would not want to do that, which is why I was spamming Substitute in his face. And here, like I mentioned, the +4 Overheat is going to KO the Zygarde, so that's a massive threat to my team that's off the table now. And this Rotom Heat is still relatively threatening to his team, so I definitely want to keep it around. Because if I get it in front of Gligar again on a free switch, I get another free substitute, and basically another free KO. Out comes Blacephalon again, and I don't really know what this Blacephalon is yet because I haven't seen it switch up moves, but he's just going to go for Shadow Ball onto my Sylveon. I'm like, okay, that's fine. It looks like he's not Choice Specs, but it turns out he's, I think he was Heavy Duty Boots on the Blacephalon, and he actually had Mind Blown. I wasn't thinking he was going to be able to KO me with anything that turn, so I actually went for Rest. Figure if he did stay in just to Shadow Ball me again, I'd rest up and then be able to spam some Sleep Talk rolls at him. But he reveals the Mind Blown, which is a pretty cool tech on his end, and he's able to KO my Sylveon, which is pretty problematic because that Mon is really good versus team. Like, it basically just shut down the Umbreon, Gligar, and to some extent the Slowbro. And if I ever caught Scizor on the switch in with Mystical Fire, it was going to do big damage. Not knock it out, but it would still do big damage. So losing out on my Sylveon there kind of sucks, but predicting Mind Blown in that instance really wasn't something that had come through my head. I thought he'd just go for like another Shadow Ball if anything, because like I said, I hadn't seen him switch up moves yet, so I thought he might be Scarf or something. So like I can get down on myself for making that play, but realistically the play there was for me to rest, assuming he'd just go for Shadow Ball or something like that again to try and KO my Sylveon, to KO my Sylveon from that range. So unfortunate that Sylveon goes down, but now I'm going to have to deal with this Blacephalon another way. Since I've seen him switch up moves, I know he's not Scarf, so I can go out into my Latios and pretty freely drop a Draco if I want to, but I felt like the Umbreon was a pretty obvious switch-in. Surprisingly, he actually decides to go into Slowbro instead. So I went for Trick there again, trying to catch the Umbreon upon switching, because I don't really need my Choice Scarf at this point in the game, because Zygarde was the only thing that I was really concerned about, or counter-scarfing a potential Scarf Blacephalon. But since neither of those are a problem for me anymore, there's no reason for me to have my Choice Scarf, so it was a free trick for me, more or less, because I didn't think he would sack his Blacephalon there. Although if he did click Shadow Ball, I would have been in a pretty tough spot. But I didn't think he'd sack his Blacephalon there, so I felt like Trick was pretty free, and getting a Trick off on the Umbreon would have been really nice for me, because that thing's going to be pretty tough to break without my Sylveon available to me. But again, he does just decide to go into Slowbro. Slowbro being Choice Scarf isn't terrible for me, but now I don't really have a great switch into it because he can just click Toxic here pretty freely, and I don't have much that I can do about that. So I'm going to go out into Mamoswine, predicting him to go for Toxic, as he does. So I get that play correct, but like I said, not having a Toxic switch in at this point in the game is going to be pretty problematic for me. Scizor comes out here, and since it was really the only switch in, I figured I'd go for Earthquake and get some big damage off on it. That looks like a relatively offensive Scizor, if I recall correctly. So I'm going to get out into my Rotom Heat here as he goes for a knockoff, I believe, and unfortunately crits me. So getting my Rotom in here would have been fine to get knocked off. Like, I would have kept the Scizor relatively low and forced him to decide between Roosting and Bullet Punching Mamoswine later. But now, not only do I get knocked off and lose my my leftovers, which, you know, obviously sucks for my Rotom Heat, but the critical hit means that I'm also not going to be able to stay in and take a Bullet Punch, so that really sucks that ended up happening. So I'm going to have to go out and Jellicent here as he goes for a Bullet Punch. This is a pretty free Scald for me, I believe, is what I go for. Where did I click this shirt? Nah, Nightshade. Oh, actually, this might have been a Will-O-Wisp, Nightshade, Taunt, Strength Sap, Jellicent, if I recall correctly. Anyways, Nightshade was pretty free damage in either case. I didn't think he'd stay in with Scizor risking the burn. But now the Scizor comes back out. Like I mentioned, I can't eat Bullet Punches with my Rotom Heat anymore, which is a big deal. So he's going to be able to roost up here on my Mamoswine as I just click Earthquake. And now he's going to get an SD off as I go out into Jellicent. Maybe I should have gone hard Jellicent instead of going for the Earthquake. But given that he was offensive and it already showed knockoff, I thought maybe he didn't have a roost on this particular Scizor set. But maybe that was too much of a pipe dream. So I'm going to have to burn my Cobra Berry and my entire Jellicent just to burn this Scizor, unfortunately. But I am at least able to get rid of it. And again, the big issue with the critical hit on Rotom Heat here is I can't just revenge with Rotom Heat. I'm going to have to give him my item on Girder here. Because I don't think Lattie's going to be able to KO from this range if he's a little more defensive than I think. So I'm just going to have to burn my Eviolite on my Girder, which is really unfortunate because Girder has a great matchup here if I hadn't gotten rid of my Eviolite. But now I am in range of Blacephalon, so I was a pretty specially bulky Girder, which meant if I had it, I could have taken this hit. But because I don't, I got to sack something off to Blacephalon here, which ends up being Mamoswine. I think it is the most useless member at this point. It was either that or Rotom Heat, and maybe in retrospect I should have sacked Rotom Heat, but looking at his team I was like, ah man, if I can just get Rotom Heat in on something, but I was forgetting that I didn't have Pain Split, so probably again sacking Rotom Heat would have been the play because it was so low at this point, but I ended up sacking the Mamoswine. I don't think either was going to help me particularly much in this end game, but at this point I'm pretty sure that I can't win. I'm going to try a trick here again to try and steal the Umbreon's leftovers, but I end up getting the Slowbro again. Which is pretty weird because I'm pretty sure I 2-hit KO Slowbro with Draco Meteor upon switch in, but maybe he was just using his regen to scout damage and things like that. So as you see, 2-hit KO easily with Draco Meteor, but he ends up going for Toxic here. I don't think he's going to give me his Slowbro at this point, for sure. So I'm going to switch out into my Girder, predicting the Umbreon to come out. Instead he goes Gligar, which is just as good for me. I can pretty freely throw off an Ice Punch, and I don't quite pick up the KO on Gligar, but he does just go for presumably either Roost or Toxic that turn. Again, it doesn't matter too much because, like I said, without my Eviolite, I can't take that hit from Blacephalon anymore. So it doesn't matter too much. I don't think that he gets full para there, but 2 Ice Punches is going to be able to pick up the KO on Gligar. I still have a chance to win this game, but Girder's definitely going to have to be the one to do it. This is actually a roll to KO. I believe even Modest Blacephalon, this was a roll to KO even without my Eviolite. But I think it was slightly in his favor, if I recall correctly. Again, if I had that Eviolite still, I'd easily tank this hit and KO the Blacephalon, and then probably just win with Girder, honestly, because that Slowbro has been tricked to Choice Scarf at this point. Not that I would be able to knock it off, because obviously if I knock it off, that Slowbro is going to become a threat again, but unfortunately, I do end up sacking off the Girder here to the Blacephalon, and that's more or less GG. This is another situation where I probably should have sacked off Rotom Heat and just gone into Latios. Doing so would have given me a chance to just drop a Draco on his team. I'd either KO Slowbro upon switch in, KO this Blacephalon, or get big damage off on the Umbreon, which would allow me to get in my Girder. But again, for some reason, I'm not making that Rotom Heat play. I guess I am thinking I had Pain Split at that point in the game. I don't really know why I wasn't sacking it off, but here I'm just going to drop a Draco with Latios. Thankfully, again, he doesn't end up going to the Umbreon, because I feel like I wouldn't be able to get as much differential off as I wanted to if he was. But out comes the Umbreon. Pretty much my only hope here is to sack Rotom Heat, and then I think double crit this Umbreon with Draco, and then crit Blacephalon with Draco. So that's pretty much the play I've got to go for at this point. I'm going to go out to Latios here and click Draco Meteor, as he just goes for the smart play and protects to get some more Toxic Chip off on me. And I think he goes and makes the 100% win play here of going Blacephalon. I don't know how necessary that was for him to do, because again, it is going to help my differential a little bit here, but I'm definitely appreciative that he didn't make that play. Like I said, I think Umbreon would have probably just walled Latios all day had he been going into it earlier, so I'll take the extra differential. But there really wasn't a whole lot of hope of me winning after I kind of refused to sack the Rotom Heat for whatever reason a few times this game. So definitely not the best that I played this season. Like I said, coming into the game, I was pretty concerned about the matchup and didn't think I had like good outs to winning, but I think that was more reflective of just I didn't bring the right team to deal with his threats, and then letting Sylveon go down. Sylveon was really probably the key to this matchup, because it gave me an always switch into Gligar, Slowbro, and Umbreon, and a pretty good switch into Blacephalon, but letting it go down to the Mind Blown there. Again, it's difficult to predict that Mind Blown is going to come out, but you know, it is what it is. We're 1-3 to start the season. My prep's definitely not been where I would like it to be. I think I played this game generally all right, outside of the not sacking Rotom Heat part. But yeah, it is what it is. Starting out 1-3 is pretty tough. And I'm pretty much, at this point in the season, I actually didn't know that the season was 10 games and not 8. So I'm thinking, okay, if I win all my games, I go 5-3, I can probably make playoffs at 5-3. But then eventually it turned out to be 8 games, 10 games instead of 8 games. But I think I didn't figure that out until like the end of week 6, that it was 10 games instead of 6 games or 8 games. So I was thinking like, okay, I got to win all of these games if I want a shot at playoffs. So coming up in the next week, we had Reggie for our week 5 match. And again, this is, in my mind, a must-win game. Even in the scheme of a 10-game season, this seems kind of like a must-win from here on out, because I can really only afford to lose one more game, I would say, to make playoffs in a 10-game season. And in an 8-game season, I didn't think I could lose any. So this was pretty much a must-win game. I think my prep looked a little less clunky in this one. And as you can see, I have the Metagross and Serperior this time. So this was my first game post-transactions, I think, in which I brought the 2 Pokemon that I picked up. I think the transactions were technically live for a week 4 match, but I didn't think Serperior or Metagross had a particularly good matchup with Mega Scizor on the other side of the field. So anyways, enough about the previous week. Looking at this week, I've got yet another Slowbro on my screen. I went through this gauntlet of playing, sorry, this is Mega Slowbro in this respect. So I went through this gauntlet of playing against Slowking, Slowbro, and Mega Slowbro, as well as week 1 I had Scizor, and week 4 I had Mega Scizor. So like a few of the Pokemon that were some of the worst matchups for my team defensively on the other side to try and deal with, I ended up hitting in like the first few weeks. So I was like, okay, if I can get through this first 5 weeks in like a decent shape, I felt like my matchups were much more favorable heading down the stretch. So but looking at the team that he ended up bringing here, I can't remember what else he had for Serperior, but looking at like the matchup here, I've got Leaf Storm Dragon Pulse on this Serperior, so it looks really nice versus his team. Gengar is really the only thing that can take a hit from Serperior, because if I go Leaf Storm into Dragon Pulse, I'm doing big damage to Como. I don't think I knock it out, but getting big damage off on that thing is great for my team. Nothing else really wants to be eating Leaf Storms on his team, especially +2 Leaf Storms. Like, even Mew can't really boost in front of me if he's like Calm Mind or anything. So Serp looks really nice in this matchup. I've got Freeze Dry on Mammo to help chip down the Slowbro for my Aerodactyl. I believe the Aerodactyl was Taunt, Earthquake, Crunch, maybe? Pretty sure I had Crunch this matchup. I don't think I actually had Roost. It might have been like Wing Attack, Earthquake, Crunch, Taunt, or something like that. I've got Air Balloon Jellicent to deal with the Excadrill, because that thing's a huge threat to my team. I thought he might run like Scarf Mold Breaker, because again, a lot of my team's ground immunities are Levitate Mons, so Rotom Heat and Latios are like 2 of the main ground immunities on my team, and then obviously Aerodactyl's not going to outspeed a Scarfed Excadrill. So I really thought Scarfed Excadrill made a lot of sense for me, so I just wanted to make sure he couldn't lock himself into Earthquake too freely versus my team. But otherwise, everything else is fairly standard from what I recall. I think it's like Stealth Rock Toxic, Metagross, AV Drapion to deal with the Gengar, And yeah, that Mamoswine's got Freeze Dry. I think I was Life Orb this game with Freeze Dry, Earthquake, Ice Shard. Yeah, that's the squad. So looking at lead matchup here, I think he's probably going to lead Persian just to get a parting shot off immediately. Got really no reason not to lead Aerodactyl. If I see Mold Breaker on Excadrill, which I'm pretty sure it would be anyways, I can obviously scout for Choice Scarf. But everything else, Arrow's got a pretty decent matchup lead with. Can crunch all of the three Dark Weak Mons, or it can taunt the Persian and stop it from going for Toxic or anything like that, because Toxic did seem like a potential bring, given that I did have the Sylveon. So, like I said, I'm just going to lead with Aerodactyl here, as he does lead with the Alolan Persian, and I could go Superior here, hard predicting a parting shot, but like I said, I was a little worried that he would have Toxic on this thing, so what I like to do instead is just click Taunt, as he goes for the parting shot. So now I can pretty freely get into my Superior, because there's really not a whole lot he can do to me. And like I mentioned, Superior puts a lot of pressure on his team by just spamming Leaf Storm, because Gengar's really the only thing that's going to switch in, and it's still going to take a decent chunk from this Leaf Storm. I actually considered running Specs Superior here, which I think probably would have picked up the 2-hit KO on Gengar, but eventually I ended up going for a little bit of a bulkier set, so this isn't even max special attack. So I think if I had gone for Specs, I could have just thrown off another Leaf Storm and basically picked up a KO, but instead I'm not going to be able to, and I'm just going to go out into my Drapion, which, like I said, is designed to deal with this Gengar. Knockoff is pretty free here. There's really no reason for me to click anything else. I do also have Poison Fang on this Drapion, so I could potentially get off a Toxic. So that's actually exactly what I'm going to do. Again, I'm pretty much expecting him to go for Parting Shot here, so going for a Poison Fang is pretty nice for me. I have the potential to get a Toxic Poison off on whatever wants to come in. He brings in the Slowbro, and unfortunately I don't get it that turn, which is fine, but I'm able to go hard out into my Superior on this thing. This is pretty much why I elected to run a bulkier Serp set, is because I needed something to deal with Mega Slowbro, but he does reveal Toxic on that. With the Superior here, so you'll probably wonder like why he would Mega that turn. I think it turned out that he ended up bringing Oblivious Slowbro as the base form instead of Regenerator, which definitely sucks for him that he wouldn't have Regenerator on this Pokemon going forward. So he just elected to Mega right there, which like I can't blame him for. Obviously it sucks that he didn't end up bringing Regenerator, but it is what it is. He gets a Toxic off on my Superior, and I'm going to double out into Mamoswine here, predicting the Gengar to want to come out as it does. And I can pretty freely throw off an Earthquake at this point, because I know he's not regen on Slowbro at this point anymore. Earthquake into Freeze Dry has a decent chance to KO, but getting rid of the Gengar is also really good, because like I mentioned, it really frees up Serp to knock out this Pokemon. So get the Earthquake off, and I'm able to KO the Gengar. As the Excadrill comes out, I'm like, okay, if this is Mold Breaker Drill, Earthquake seems pretty free for him to click this turn, so I'm just going to go out to my Balloon Jellicent as he actually reveals Swords Dance, which is definitely a problem for me. He's going to go for Iron Head, but thankfully does not flinch me as he pops my Air Balloon, and I'm able to get Scald off. Getting a burn obviously would have been amazing, because it would have meant I would have kept my Jellicent, but at the very least I'm able to get enough damage off on this Excadrill that it's within KO range for my Superior, Ice Shard on my Mamo, and from my Aerodactyl, so I'm not too concerned about the Excadrill anymore. I'm just going to go out into Serp and use this as an opportunity to get some boosts up, so get a Leaf Storm here, be able to KO the Excadrill and get my +2. Mew comes out, and I'm like, okay, well this is bulky Superior, so there's really not a whole lot he can do to me, and Mew's a pretty big threat to my team, so I don't mind getting rid of it here, as he actually reveals the Dragon Dance. Like I mentioned, Serp is insanely good in this game, and it's really my best way of dealing with Slowbro at this point, but I'm like relatively certain that this Mew has nothing to touch Superior. Like, he would probably run a Psychic move, obviously, for good neutral stab coverage versus my team, be able to hit things like Girder and the like as well. Then I'm like, okay, he's going to want something to hit Metagross, obviously, so that's going to be like Earthquake or Knockoff or something like that. And then I think he'd actually probably run Roost versus me, but in general, I would say he just doesn't have a fire move. I think he's probably got Earthquake for Drapion plus Metagross. I think he's probably got Psychic Fangs for neutral coverage plus my Girder. And last move, I'm trying to remember what else I even had on my team at this point. But basically, what it shook down to was like, this guy does not have anything that's going to KO my Superior from this range. That was like what I told myself. What I was sure was the case was that he didn't have like Flare Blitz or anything crazy like that. Best he could do to me was Psychic Fangs this turn, was my thought. So he actually reveals the Darkest Lariat, which as you can see does absolutely nothing to me. And I'm able to just Giga Drain back my HP and KO this Mew. So another big threat dead. and Superior is still sitting pretty here. Like, he can't revenge kill me with anything, so he's got to go out into Como here and predict me to go for a Dragon Pulse, which is a good scout on his part because I haven't shown it yet, but it's kind of obvious, I think, that I would have it. But that's good damage on Slowbro because that's going to put it in range of a Freeze Dry from my Mamoswine, so I really don't care too much. And if he wants to make the play back into Como, as he does, Giga Drain's going to get me out of range of toxic damage, which means I can get another Dragon Pulse off here and pick up another KO. So the Como is now in range of Wing Attack from my Aerodactyl, and he's trying to make the play to get him out of this situation with Superior, which would be to stay in with Como and hope I predict the Slowbro to come in, or that I switch out to save my Superior for the Slowbro. But I ended up calling that out. Not necessarily as such calling out that he would stay in, but basically like it was no drawback for me to stay in and click Dragon Pulse there, because like I mentioned, the Como is already in range of a Wing Attack from my Aerodactyl, so I don't care if he switches into Slowbro and sacks it to keep his Como alive. Getting rid of Slowbro is just as good for me because it puts Mamoswine in a really good position to deal with his team as well. Because even if he's like a bulky set on his Aerodactyl, on his Como, or he's got Koba Berry or whatever to deal with Aerodactyl, I still would have Ice Shard in the back. I believe as well as Bullet Punch to deal with the Como if it was a setup variant. So all I really needed was chip off on his team to break through his team with Superior, and that's essentially what it did. It picked up 3 KOs here, taking out the Excadrill, the Mew, and the Como. So definitely an insane matchup for Superior here because his Steel type obviously didn't resist Grass. So pretty insane matchup for Superior, and it put in the work as a result. Here I basically just don't want him to get a slack off with his Slowbro, which is kind of what I figured he would go for if I went into anything else. Because like best case scenario for him is I go into something like I don't know, Drapion, and he can slack off on that. Like obviously I would have the opportunity to Poison Fang and get a Toxic off on him, but like there's not a whole lot else I could do, and him being healthy on his Slowbro is really problematic for me. So what I decided to do was go into Mamoswine. If he brought in the Persian instead, I probably would have switched out into like Drapion and just thrown off a Poison Fang. And maybe he would have eventually gotten that slack off anyways. But as it turns out, he's actually going to go for it here in front of the Mamoswine, but I am able to KO him with Freeze Dry. I can't remember if that was a guaranteed KO. It might have depended on his investment, but I figured he'd be more Fizz Def anyways to deal with Arrow, Metagross, and the Mamoswine. So here I'm just going to take my chip on the Persian as he knocks me out with Foul Play. In retrospect, I probably should have saved the differential there just because I know it's going to be kind of a tight playoff race going down. But I didn't really want to mess around. It was some kind of weird Persian set, like Nasty Plot Parting Shot or some weird crap like that. So I like to go into the Drapion here because, again, it's kind of my auto win here to just click Poison Fang a few times. Eventually I would get that Toxic, and there's really nothing. He's already shown like there's nothing he can do to me with this Persian. So I'm just going to kind of slowly whittle down and KO that thing with Toxic plus Earthquake. So able to pick up 3-0 victory here on Reggie. I think my team, like I said, had a lot better matchup this week in general. It is difficult for my team to handle Bros and Slowkings and things like that, but because I was able to get that chip off on Slowbro early, and he turned out to not be Regenerator, definitely worked out in my favor, and I was able to pick up the W here. So 2-3 coming out of this week. I think my differential is actually pretty close to even because the games I'd lost to this point I think were like 2-0, 1-0, and 2-0 or something like that, or 3-0, 2-0, and 1-0. So I'm pretty sure my differential is not terrible, all things considered. So I figure, okay, if I can win out or win all but one of my games going forward, I should be a pretty good lock for playoffs. So that was kind of my target going forward. And that definitely started this week. I really needed this win. And the new edition, not the Metagross because it actually never hit the field, but the new edition of Superior really put in work in this game. So I was glad I picked it up. Because my team had been struggling a lot with bulky waters to this point in the season. So having Superiors just seemed like a much more reliable option than Tangela to bring to matches where I have to deal with things like Slowbro and Slowking over Tangela. All right, last matchup for this week is versus Chess. So again, this is my week 6 match. I'm coming in at 2-3. I believe Chess came into this game also at 2-3, if I'm not mistaken. So we both really need to win this game. Not that we can't make playoffs if we lose, but like it's really not looking too great for either of us if we do lose this game because there's still 4 weeks left after this, and we basically need to win out at that point to make playoffs. So this matchup also I felt like was a little bit more in my favor than some of my previous ones. Like I mentioned, I do have the kind of gauntlet here where I've got the SLOWBROTHERS, so Slowkings here in this matchup. But again, I felt like this one was pretty decent for me in general. I feel like Mamoswine had kind of a field day with his team. Really doesn't have great switch-ins for the combination of Earthquake plus Ice Shard. As you can see, his only ground resist on this team that he brought is the Thundurus that's sitting right there, which obviously isn't going to appreciate an Ice Shard. I felt like Rotom Heat once again had a pretty good matchup. I believe this is Nasty Plot Rotom Heat with Pain Split to deal with Chansey. Toxic Chansey would obviously be a little bit of a problem for that, but in general, just having Pain Split on Rotom when you're facing off against like Chansey or Blissey, even if you're at full HP and go for Pain Split, they're going to take like 33% or something crazy just because that HP stat's so high. So if he doesn't have Toxic, Rotom's definitely going to 1v1 that Chansey, but even if he does, it's not the end of the world for me, but I obviously would prefer that I don't get Toxic. I do also have Heal Bell on the Sylveon to help deal with that to some extent, but Rotom Heat matchup, Rotom and Mamoswine, you can see that the first two things I put on my team this week both had really good matchups in my opinion. Jellicent was kind of the last minute decision because I was like, okay, I need something to take a V-Create from Victini because Aerodactyl, Rotom Heat really don't appreciate doing that, so I decided to bring like Max Fizz Def Jellicent, I think, but even that's going to get 2-hit KO'd by Banded V-Create if rocks are up, and I think I was just leftovers on that Jellicent. Drapion, I think, was Toxic Spikes this game. Yeah, it was Taunt Toxic Spikes. Taunt obviously lets me deal with the Chansey relatively well, as well as preventing Calm Mind setup from things like the Slowking. And I've also got Knockoff and Earthquake, so Knockoff obviously is nice to spread around his team, and Earthquake's just to hit the Mega Mawile. And the Aerodactyl this week, I think, was Earthquake Stone Edge with Roost, if I'm not mistaken. Can't remember what the last move was. It might have been Taunt to deal with the Chansey as well. I had like a lot of Chansey prep this game just because Chansey was so annoying for my team to deal with. Just kind of looking at like Chansey's one of those mons that's usually around like 9 or 10 points in most leagues because nobody usually drafts it because it's so easy to abuse, but that doesn't mean you don't have to bring abusers. Like I had to bring the Taunt on Drapion. I had to bring Toxic Spikes to help make sure it's always getting worn down upon switch in. So like it's not like Chansey's easy to deal with. You just need to make sure you dedicate enough and it should be able to be neutralized in the match, but that doesn't mean if you don't bring anything it's not going to be a problem. So I believe that was actually Taunt Roost Edgequake on the Aerodactyl there, if I'm not mistaken. The Sylveon set's kind of weird. It was Combine Draining Kiss with Heal Bell, and I believe it was Shadow Ball actually over Mystical Fire. I elected to do that because I figured he would assume I'd have Mystical Fire and think that Victini's a safe switch-in. And Shadow Ball's doing decent damage to Mega Mawile anyways, if I can get some chip off on that thing. And this Sylveon set would actually kind of put in work if that were the case, because getting to +6, Draining Kiss is going to be healing me back so much off of Chansey, and even Slowking to some extent. And Heal Bell's able to clean up some Toxic chip. So while obviously he would have more Toxics than I would have Heal Bells, I thought it kind of gave some longevity to the Sylveon and allowed it to kind of set up freely in the face of something like Chansey, not fearing the Toxic. Anyways, I'm pretty sure looking at his team, his likely leads are either Victini or the Crocodile. I believe I'm Focus Sash Mamoswine on this team. Oh no, I'm Akaberry Mamoswine on this team. So I'm Akaberry Thick Fat, so I know I can live any one hit from Victini. So if he has like Bandit or something and he sees Mamoswine, he might just go straight for a V-Create. And that's pretty much the biggest threat to my team is the Victini. So I'm perfectly happy to trade some damage on Mamoswine for that whole Victini, especially because I could still potentially get up rocks later. So I'm pretty happy to lead with Mamoswine here, as like I said, I think he either leads with Crocodile or Victini. I do kind of regret here that I didn't end up bringing Oblivious Mamoswine so that this Intimidate would actually not proc, but it is what it is. He just decides to Stealth Rock in my face, probably figuring I was going to do the same, but I feel like Knockoff was relatively free there. I thought Slowking might be a guy to come in there, so Knockoff seemed pretty free, and surprisingly he's still giving me damage on the Crocodile, and at this point it's not really clicking in my mind that he might have Wish on Chansey, so I'm like, okay, damage on Crocodile is great, because that's going to chip him down from my Aerodactyl later, but anyways, I'm going to get Aerodactyl in here on an Earthquake as he just goes out Chansey, and I'm going to go out and I think click Wing Attack this turn if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, I had Stealth Rock. Okay, so I didn't have Roost on this, or Taunt on this. It was Stealth Rock, Roost, Edgequake. So yeah, I'm able to get off my Stealth Rocks there with Aerodactyl. Sorry, I just totally forgot what that Aerodactyl set was. Anyways, I'm able to get my Stealth Rocks up here, and Stealth Rocks are probably better for me, I would say, in this game than they are for him. If he's Boots on either his Victini or his Thundurus, that's going to show me initially, which is going to be really good information to have, because I know if he's not Choice Banded Victini, that Jellicent can take 2 V-Creates, and if he's not Heavy Duty Boots on his Thundurus, then he's probably Choice Scarf, if I'd have to guess, because I do have the Superior and I have the Aerodactyl here, which is actually a pretty decent threat to his team. So anyways, here he's going to go for Wish with his Chansey. I didn't again, expect Wish coming into this game, so maybe I should have, but god damn, he's gonna Wish up his Crocodile. There's not a whole lot I can do about it here. But what I am going to do is, even though you can't see it on my screen for whatever reason right now, I am going to get up my Toxic Spike. And that one layer of Toxic Spike is going to be really nice for dealing with his team. Again, especially the Victini, making sure it has very limited switch-ins. And with a Poison off on Slowking, I can beat it 1v1 with my Sylveon. So here I'm going to go out to Sylveon, go for my Calm Mind, and here I'm like, he's probably got Teleport, and he's just going to go for that here and like teleport into either Mawile or Victini. So what I'm going to do first is Calm Mind because I want to scout if he has Toxic, which he does. And I've got Heal Bell, so I'm not super concerned about that at this point. And now I'm like, okay, I do beat this 1v1 if he stays in, but I'm just going to scout some damage with Draining Kiss first of all. And like I said, he's probably got Teleport, and he's going to go for that. So he teleports out into Victini. It does reveal to not be Heavy Duty Boots, so I'm thinking, okay, this is probably either Choice Scarf or Choice Banded. Either way, Jellicent's pretty much the most expendable member. It's going to force him to stay in and take 2 turns of Poison Chip, which means he really can't come in freely later in the game, which is nice. He'd have to come in off of a clean sack. So he is going to go for V-Crate. He does turn out to be Banded, and I guess I wasn't leftovers on this Jellicent. I can't remember what my item actually was. It might have been Culver Berry to deal with the Crocodile. Not entirely sure, but he's going to go for 2 V-Crates, knock out my Jellicent. But like I said, this Victini is now nice and low, and because I know he's Banded and he's got the 2 speed drops, I can just freely go out into Mamoswine and click Earthquake here. Getting chip damage off on Crocodile is really nice for me in the long run. And again, I'm really wishing that I had been Oblivious Mamoswine here, because Earthquake and Ice Shard, if I wasn't intimidated, would have cleaned out this Crocodile, but it is what it is. I go out into Aerodactyl here as he makes a really ballsy and really good play. It goes for Stone Edge on either Arrow or Rotom Heat coming in. He ends up missing, which obviously sucks for him. It's very hard to Theoremon from this point in the game how it would have gone if he had hit that Stone Edge. But obviously me having my Aerodactyl versus not having my Aerodactyl is a straight benefit for me. So I can't argue that it's nice to dodge that Stone Edge as Aerodactyl comes out here, and I'm just going to be able to clean up this Crocodile with Roost into Earthquake. So that's what I'm going to do. If he made the play and went for Earthquake that turn, again, I didn't super mind losing Aerodactyl because I didn't think I needed it to win this game. I felt like the combination of Mamoswine, Drapion, and Rotom Heat was enough. But obviously him missing that first Stone Edge really sucks for him, because now he's got to revenge me. He's got to reveal to me that he's not Boots Thunderous. So again, I'm thinking, since the Victini wasn't Choice Scarf, this definitely is. I've got no reason to risk Mamoswine or Rotom Heat this turn, because Sylveon doesn't do a whole lot for me at this point in the match. It's nice to have around, but it really doesn't do too much for me. So what I'm actually going to do here is just go for Heal Bell. Maybe Draining Kiss first was the better play, but I was thinking he might go Hard Mawile, and I want to get the Toxic off in case I wanted to come back in on something like Slowking or Chansey later in the game. But here we're just going to trade Sylveon for Victini, and again, I'm pretty much fine with making that trade. Sylveon didn't do a ton for me at this point in the match. It could do something if it got its HP back off of Draining Kisses, but it wasn't doing as much for me, I felt like, as my other members. So Chansey's going to come out here on the Rotom Heat, and I'm like, okay, first got to scout for Toxic because I don't have my Heal Beller anymore, so he goes for Toxic. So it's good for me to know he has it, because now I know I need a lot of chip off on the Chansey in order to deal with it later in the match. Here I'm going to go hard for Earthquake, because I really thought he'd go Mega Mawile here. Mega Mawile seemed really likely to come in on the knockoff, wanting to keep Chansey's Eviolite. But he elects to stay in and just go for Seismic Toss. He probably recognizes how much of a threat this Drapion is to his team, actually, because with Slowking a little bit chipped and poisoned, this Chansey not really being able to do a ton back to it besides Seismic Toss, and I am faster than Mega Mawile and able to do a good chunk of damage to it with Earthquake. So I think he's just kind of realizing here how much of a threat this Drapion is to his team, and maybe that's why he's staying into Seismic Toss, but I could have gotten its Aviolite off with the knockoff there. So unfortunately I don't get that, but I do get this play right as I go for Taunt. Taunt was fine there because it's either going to keep the Chansey low as it does, or it's going to make sure that the Mawile can't come out and SD in my face. Here I'm going to swap out to the Aerodactyl, thinking I could maybe get a Roost off on this taunted Chansey, going for another Seismic Toss or something, but he ends up going out to Slowking, and I'm like, okay, I'll take the trade of Slowking for the Aerodactyl at this point, because it means that I can more or less come in with Rotom Heat and start picking up KOs if I want to, because that Chansey is at 37% and poisoned. It can't switch in on Stealth Rocks and deal with me. But similarly, Mamoswine also gets a KO here just by clicking Earthquake into Ice Shard. So that's what I ended up electing to do here, because I felt like it automatically denied the Mawile from getting up an SD, which is really, I feel like, the only way I can lose at this point in the game is if I allow this Mawile to SD my face. So I am going to sack off Mamoswine here to deal with that. It makes it a little bit more difficult for me to deal with the Thunderous in the long run, But I felt like the play there was always stay in an Earthquake, prevent him from getting up that Swords Dance, because, like I said, that was really the only way I lost, is if I switched out Mamoswine there, or guaranteed lost anyway, if I switched out Mamoswine there and allowed him to get up that Swords Dance. So out comes the Rotom Heat on the Mawile, and here I was pretty sure he was either going to sack Thundurus or Chansey, so it was really no drawback for me to click Nasty Plot here. I really thought he'd sack Chansey first and then try to win with Thundurus later. But he ends up sacking the Thundurus here, so I don't know if he predicted the Nasty Plot there, but that was definitely the better play if he did predict me to go for Nasty Plot, was to go Thundurus over Chansey. But he's just going to get some Superpower chip off on me. Like, I knew he wasn't going to be able to KO me with Thundurus anyway, so I wasn't super concerned. But I'm just going to be able to discharge here and knock out the Thundurus pretty cleanly. And now he can't revenge me with Chansey because, again, it's going to die to +2. So what I'm actually going to do here is Pain Split up on what I'm predicting to be a Sucker Punch from the Mawile, as I do get that play right as well. There really was no other play for him to make there with Mawile. Like, there was no other reason for him to come in and try and beat me with it if he didn't have Sucker Punch. So here I do have to go, unfortunately, for Overheat to KO because Discharge may be a roll if he's a little more especially defensive. So I took my 90% chance to win there by just clicking Overheat. As he Sucker Punches me, and then he's going to go out and Chansey here, and I was pretty sure I would win with Drapion anyways if he did end up Sucker Punching me. Or sorry, if I did miss Overheat and he ended up Sucker Punching me, because then I could just Pain Split again on the Mawile, keep it nice and low to keep it in range of Earthquake, and then just win with Drapion, clicking Earthquake plus Taunt versus the Chansey. So I felt like my guaranteed win there was Pain Split up, Overheat the Mawile, and then just 1v1 this Chansey. There's really no way Chansey can beat me at this point in the game because it is poisoned. And like I mentioned, that HP stat really coming in clutch here on my Rotom Heat, keeping me out of range of Seismic Toss. And here he just kind of has to keep Wish Protecting and hoping something happens, but there's really not a whole lot he can do, as I do Nasty Plot on the Protect there, because he knew he kind of had to. Here I think he actually does end up going for the Toxic, but if he doesn't keep spamming Wish at me, he's going to lose at some point. So in this case, he just goes right for the Toxic, and I am going to pick up the 2-0 victory here with my Rotom Heat. So like I mentioned, the Rotom Heat matchup was really good this game. It ended up cleaning up those last 3 Pokemon for me with Nasty Plot, Pain Split. Really, the biggest play I had to make that game was predicting him to have Toxic on Chansey, but even then, like, there wasn't a whole lot that I really had to do. Like I mentioned, I thought this matchup was generally pretty good for me, bar, I guess, the Mega Mawile and the Victini, but because Victini wasn't heavy-duty boots, it got chipped down pretty quickly by Rocks plus Poison damage. Toxic Spikes, just in general, really wrecked his team. I can't remember if he had a grounded Poison type, or like if his grounded Poison type was really not very bringable versus me or something like that, that I felt like Toxic Spikes would work out. But they definitely did in this matchup, and I felt like having them up more or less streamlined this matchup for me to win with Rotom Heat, and that's more or less what happened. Like I said, it's hard to theory mine what would have happened if he had hit that Stone Edge on the Aerodactyl, because obviously I would have had to come in and revenge with Mamoswine a little bit early, and he would have gotten the switch initiative that way. So maybe he could have done something from that position, but in general, I felt like I was still in a pretty good position with Rotom Heat plus Drapion on the back end. Like, if he'd gone out into Slowking to revenge my Mamoswine, knocking that thing off would have been, you know, just as good for me as hitting that Stone Edge with Aerodactyl was. So, like I said, I don't know what would have happened, but I still feel like I was in a pretty commanding position with those 2 Pokemon in the back, and we ended up picking up the 2-0 win here. So, a little bit of a momentum going here later in the season. We're now 3-3 with, I think, like, pretty much net 0 or net 1 or 2 differential or something at this point. Differential is not great, but at least we are 3-3. We're still in the playoff hunt at this point, and I'll show you guys my, I believe, weeks. Maybe I'll do all of my last of my regular season games coming up for weeks 7 through 10. Yeah, there's really no reason to break that up. So next time I'll bring you guys weeks 7 through 10, but for now, that's it. Thank you guys very much for watching to this point, and I appreciate it. See you all in the next video. Later.